Good morning, good evening, and good night, because we're international. And welcome to our first conference, How to Promote Green Solutions Among the Youth. My name is Noah Rakoto-Arijaonina, and I am one of the co-founders of the Geneva Youth Call, with my colleagues here, Thibaut Fellman, Eva Lovisotto, who will be there tonight, later, and Jérôme Lancy, who's in Washington right now. My three co-workers started this project in this context of a discussion for the 75th anniversary of the United Nations last year, with the hope of uniting the youth and bring concrete solutions to this world for the problems that are global, local, around the world. Noé will explain it to you later, what the Geneva Youth Call is. And for me, the Geneva Youth Call is something inspiring. Of course it's work, of course it can be difficult sometimes, but we are all working to a better world. And you, Thibaut, what is it for you?
For me, also a member of the Geneva Youth Call, Geneva Youth Call is about bringing youth together. Because considering youth as a whole, I believe that we can overcome issues and blockages that badly impacted global cooperation, and especially on environmental issues. And this is about improving a system that failed us in a way, but being more optimistic. It's about change, it's about improvement, it's about cooperation, international cooperation with our platform and with our solution, the Geneva Youth Call. And this is what we're going to explain it to you tonight, and have a good night.
Thank you, Thibaut. This event is a big and first step to our World Youth Assembly that we will organize in fall 2021 in Geneva, and we hope in the United Nations if it's possible. We are so glad to be part of a project in this context of uncertainty. And before I let the team that makes everything possible present itself, I'd like to summarize what will happen tonight. So after some speeches, there will be a discussion with the guest speakers of tonight, and they will answer some of your questions that you can ask on our platform, genevayouthcall.com. So write some questions, and we will answer them later. So here is the team of students that worked for almost a year on this project, and they will just present themselves.
Hi, my name is Noé.
Hi, my name is Alexi.
Hi, I'm Victor.
Hello, I'm Erin.
I'm Aliénor.
I'm Eva.
And I'm Emma.
Thank you so much. They're really doing an incredible job. I will now let Mr. Esposito, the director of the Bachelor of International Relations of the Global Studies Institute, who has been helping us and guiding us all this time, tell a few words about the Geneva Youth Call. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Noah. Thank you, the call, for your words. Ladies and gentlemen, dear Mrs. Alessandra Vellucci, Director of the United Nations Information Service in Geneva, dear Mrs. Anne Maher, Co-President of the Senior Women for Climate Protection in Switzerland, and dear Mrs. Claire Graff, a member of the Children and Youth Constituency to the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change, the UNGO, the member of the Geneva Youth Team, dear participants. It's an honor and a pleasure to speak to you today about this first step in what I hope will be a lasting project which aims to provide a new framework for today's issue in the form of a future World Youth Charter. Tonight's conference is therefore a first step that calls for many others, and that is resolutely part of a historical movement whose roots lie in the source of transnational protests. There are no protesters tonight, but I think the spirit, to a certain extent, is a little bit floating in the air. Indeed, transnational protests have become a benchmark of global activism since 1999. Remember, when some 30,000 to 50,000 protesters marched against the World Trade Organization at its meeting in Seattle. It has become clear meetings that the WTO, the World Bank, the Group of Eight, the G8, the International Monetary Fund, regional development banks, the European Union, and the United Nations, alone or in combination, to provide focal points for societal actors excluded from these deliberations. The group used these opportunities to express grievances against the process of policies, or more generally against neoliberal globalization. This particular crystallization of global governance has enabled many and diverse societal groups to build a transnational protest movement that targets these meetings, sharing tactics demands, while also relying on local mobilization. Perception of economic globalization have likewise transformed the act of political protest. So 2 decades later, climate activists are at the front line of these global protests. But with a major change, they have been co-opted into the multilateral arena, such as the recent project like the UN at 75. And Mrs. Alessandra Vellucci will say some words about this new and very transformative way to tackle with non-governmental actors today's challenges and issues. So the Geneva Youth Call is therefore a project that is in line with the direction of history, but which also stands out for its originality. Firstly, they are very young, and this is why they call them the Geneva Youth Assembly. I'm perhaps not eligible to talk about it, but well, as I was the professor, I think this is the only way for me to have a way to say tonight. So firstly, it's a very original project because it was born here in the wall of the University of Geneva, and more precisely, within my project management course. So as a professor, I'm very proud to see this project grow and go beyond the walls of the university. And that's fantastic to see the impact of the motivation, of the energy, students really involved in that project. Secondly, its singularity, and certainly is one of the key points of this project and of the Geneva Youth Call team. The second point in its singularity, it's the desire to combine reflection and solution, as illustrated by the title of tonight's conference, How to Promote Green Solutions Among the Youth. Indeed, it has never been so important to grasp the identification of a problem and its solution on the same level, like two sides of the same coin. Finally, the drafting of a World Youth Charter aims precisely at combining these two objectives, identifying the fundamental challenges of the youth and formulating solutions, all in one single document. And to do this, the General Assembly that we hope will be hosted at the United Nations in Geneva will precisely make this possible. This new kind of charter is as much as an intellectual as a political challenge, combining two approaches that are often difficult to bring together. Finally, this is the challenge to which the Geneva Youth team and our speakers are inviting us tonight, and to which I would like to express my warmest thanks for their participation and for to bring their ideas into this debate. Thank you so much. Now I'm pleased to welcome the head of the information service at the United Nations, Geneva, Mrs. Alessandra Vellucci.
Thank you very much, Professor Esposito. It's nice to be here. Last time I put my feet on this scene, we were with the Secretary General, Antonio Guterres, who presented here the Agenda for Disarmament at the University of Geneva. So that's an honor to be back and a pleasure. As it has been already recalled, we all started this project, thinking about this project when we all started thinking about the UN being old, being 75. And the Secretary General at that occasion decided that we didn't want to tell the world how good the UN were, but we wanted to listen from we, the peoples, about what they wanted from the UN. Most of the youngest generations couldn't really see when we say the UN were created to save humanity from the scourge of war. War is something which many of us, luckily, have never known. And so it is a little bit of a faraway idea. So we wanted to see what the UN were really there for, and what, for young people, for less young people, but for today's people, multilateralism meant. And we've come up with a survey that was really a global survey, which gave out the results we were expecting. People want more multilateralism. They want a better multilateralism. They want a multilateralism which is not just among member states of the UN, but among all the various stakeholders in the international debates. And youth has a decisive voice. That is being coming out very clearly from that analysis. So that is why I'm particularly happy that on that occasion we had the Geneva Youth Call that was generated in the process of the UN 75. So we had the first dialogue on the 24th of April 2020, and we invited the Geneva universities, the Graduate Institute, other youth fora to come and debate with the UN experts. And Eva presented us with this idea: why don't we create a platform where young people can make proposals to the UN on how to solve the problem of today's world. And I am amazed that less than, just 1 year after, this platform has become a reality. It is generating ideas. It will generate ideas tonight, and we hope it will also generate this charter at the Geneva Youth Assembly that we hope really to welcome at the Palais des Nations, which is the European location, the European siege of the UN in Europe, for those of you who follows us from far away. Hopefully, it will be in an in-person meeting, and we will be happy to also welcome you in person at the Palais des Nations. Otherwise, it would be maybe a hybrid meeting, but it would be great, because this initiative is really about concrete ideas, and it's about coming out with something which is from the youth, for the youth, and that at the UN we really need to hear. Just to give you a little bit of the setting of this, the theme of tonight, which, as you know, is how to promote green solutions among youth, for youth, but also for the non-youth, for the UN itself. 1 year later, we have a clear stance from the Secretary General. He has said it several times. He's make it or break it. This year is the year. And not only because we will have the COP26 at the end of the year in Glasgow, but also because the situation is dramatically changing. This morning, I chaired the press briefing of the United Nations in Geneva. We have journalists coming to the UN twice a week to hear from our colleagues about the news, about what's up in the international news. And the colleague from the World Meteorological Organization has spoken at length about the heat wave that has struck the west coast of North America, speaking about the incredible temperature that has been reached in British Columbia, 47.9 degrees. I can't even imagine what it means. And this heat wave has been up there for 5 days. So it is something which is absolutely incredible. We need to do something, and it's not just, lip service. And I think really the subject of tonight is the most appropriate that you could find as the first element of your request for ideas to bring at the UN, to the UN. The SG, the Secretary General, has made a very clear call for action. You can see here with our, the main goals. That's the Global Coalition for Net Zero Emission, which we have to reach by 2050. Very, very important. And this coalition is being more and more, joined more and more by the many member states. We need national action plans that make sense, that have a concrete element, that are really making a change at the national level. So the international global coalition, the national level. And then what comes with changing an economy, changing our system, changing our approach to the economic model. So that is these are the main issues that we are putting out to the world. And we hope that you will be able to discuss some of these tonight with your colleagues. There are key messages. People think that because of COVID, climate change has stopped. It's not true. It's absolutely not true. It continues, and it continues at a very fast pace. We also see that maybe, I wouldn't say for the first time, but we see a growing interest and a growing commitment by many countries, but not just countries. Civil society has been fundamental in all this process. So this momentum is growing, and we need to build on it. So we have the call to action from the Secretary General, and we can say that people are starting to see that this is in the interest of each and every one of them, not just for, children, grandchildren, and maybe in 100 years' time. It's something that is going to benefit not only the economy, but the people, and now. We have created a platform that some of you know, it's called Act Now. This is an app that you can all use. I really invite all the people that are listening to us and the young people who participate in the discussion tonight to download this app and actually put some of these ideas, of these great ideas, also on the Act Now platform. We have more than 2 million concrete actions which have been logged. People are saying, from tomorrow morning, I'll put, I'll turn off the water when I wash my teeth. It's very concrete. It seems very trivial, but it makes a difference when it's on 1 million or 2 million people. It's important that people feel that they can do something. You have to feel that every one of you can make a difference, and that's the basis. Otherwise, we won't even discuss. So this is something that I would invite you to have a look at during your discussion, after your discussion, and promote in your circles. There is also a website in many languages. This is the year, as the Secretary General, the break it or make it year. So we have a lot of events on our plate. Many have already happened from the beginning of the year to now. You have many more. You can see them in this slide. There will probably be more. These are the global events, let's say the events that are promoted or organized by the UN system, but obviously there are many more. But you can see that there is a real convergence of actions also at the international level. So that is the moment to act and propose your solution. So that is my last point. Please get in contact with us if you have anything that you would like us to know. And good luck for your work tonight. Thank you very much, and I hope to see you in Geneva in October or November. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Thank you so much, Mrs. Vellucci. The fact that you're here, that you support us, that you support the initiative of the Geneva Youth Call, that you are willing to host the World Youth Assembly in the United Nations in Geneva, it means a lot to us. Thank you so much. And now I let Noé Lukundula come to the stage and present to you the Geneva Youth Call in all its details. Thank you.
Thank you, Noah. As a member of the Geneva Youth Call initiative, I would like to start by thanking the University of Geneva, the Global Studies Institute, and the United Nations for the support they gave to us during our development. We are delighted to finally be able to host this conference, setting the stage for the launch of our project, the Geneva Youth Call, which I will now have the pleasure to introduce to you. Every year, young people around the world speak up about different topics important to them, such as the March for Climate, the Black Lives Matter movement, and all of these happened in 2020, even through the difficult sanitary conditions. But unfortunately, it is not easy for them to be fully heard. The importance of the youth in our societies, economies, and as part of the overall population is not represented in the high places where decisions for the future of our world are taken. Therefore, the Geneva Youth Call initiative aims to create a space for the youth to be truly heard. In order to achieve this goal, we will host a global youth assembly in Geneva this autumn, which will enable several young people, defined between the age of 15 and 30 years old, to address different issues they are facing and the solutions that they came up with. To be able to participate in this assembly, wherever you come from, you need to make a contribution on the Geneva Youth Call platform, where you can participate as a problem witness or a problem solver. This year's assembly will mostly focus on environmental issues, but the next ones will bring up different subjects, such as the education, the use and regulation of technologies, and the human rights, and so on. The goal of this assembly is to come out with concrete and achievable solutions and to outline the issues that the young people are facing around the world. Ultimately, we will implement these contributions in a youth charter that will be flexible and should evolve each year depending on the youth needs. This charter will provide to the international actors an idea of what the youth priorities and claims are around the world. We strongly believe that the youth should have a word to the chapter when it comes to the conception of the future of our world. After all, aren't they the ones that will live in this future? We feel like the youth can come up with solutions that other generations would not think about, and by doing so, it allows them from an early age to better understand the issues facing our world. We also believe in an intergenerational conversation that can lead to improvements in both ways of thinking, and that is why we have decided to invite two persons from two different generations for this conference this evening. They will share their actions, thoughts, and maybe regrets about a subject that concerns every generation more than the previous one, the environment. When I joined this initiative, I discovered a team united in one clear goal, having a positive impact for the world. A team committed to giving a voice to every young person on the planet. A team driven by tremendous ambitions, but who can at the same time appreciate every step forward, regardless of how little it may be. And I'm proud and honored today to be a part of this team. I strongly believe in our capacity to bring new and forward-looking ideas that can bring some fresh insights to the great institutions that rule our world. I will now let this conference go on with a word from Mike Horn, who, although in one of his many adventures, still wants to support us by answering our questions.
For me, adventure means discovering my mind, body, and soul, making me the best person that I possibly can be, and then discovering the unknown elements of nature. To be able to know who you are allows you to discover nature in a more advanced and complex way, to be able to know your limitations and adapting that to the challenge or the adventure that you're engaging. That is what adventure allows me to do. In all topics that makes the world go round, the youth must be involved because they will be living on the planet in the future. For me, the youth, they are the biggest source of untapped energy that's not exploited. And the moment that you can give a responsibility through decision-making and engagement to the youth, they will be able to come up with a point of view that is completely different than the politicians and the adults that's more involved in developing the economy and business of the world. When you give the youth projects to do with responsibility, they will definitely come up with solutions that the politicians and the industry could not think about. Adventure we can find in all different walks of life. Adventure is not only something that we do, adventure becomes a lifestyle. The moment that adventure becomes a lifestyle, that is when it becomes a lifelong project. So to be able to make adventure a lifelong project, you need to have the right energy, you need to have the right attitude to be able to engage fully into an adventure that will inspire others around you, that would start this movement of energy that would lead into the future. The moment you give the younger people the responsibility, the moment you give them the freedom of decision making, is the moment that you teach them that in the future they must be capable of making decisions, and that is when it turns into a lifelong project. The Geneva Youth Corps is an amazing initiative simply because it is a program that turns an idea into action. Anything with a positive action brings value to the youth. And it's not only the value that it brings, but it engages adults to listen to youth through an organization that will be respected. Any value you can add will be appreciated. If you don't do anything, nothing happens. Being a professional explorer for 30 years, I've seen the planet change like few people experience. Being outside constantly in different elements like the mountains, the jungles, the oceans, the polar regions. For me, the biggest change I've seen is on the polar ocean. In 2006, when I went to the North Pole, the ice measured 2 meters 50. Last year, when I crossed, the ice measured 8 centimeters, meaning that the changes are happening much quicker than we ever thought it would happen. For us, it is important to be able not only to fight against these changes, but to be able to change our lifestyle, that whatever we do have a positive impact on nature. I've seen the world change. The human being is busy destroying the mother that actually feeds us. We need to change the way we consume. We need to change the way we use energy. We need to change the way we make ourselves mobile to be able to add a positive impact into the future of our planet.
I would like to thank again Mike Horn for taking time in his literally wide life and for answering our questions, because it was really amazing to be able to have his opinion about the GYC. And now we have the chance to have in presential Mrs. Anne Marer, our first guest speaker. She is the co-president of the Association Senior Women for Climate Protection in Switzerland, and she will tell you all about her activism journey. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you very much. It's with great emotion that I am speaking this evening in the context of your innovative project, and I salute the hard work of the team behind it and the institution that supports the ambitious approach. I am very grateful to you for inviting me to this opening conference. As you know, commitment in environmental cause is not a long, quiet river, as the rejection in the vote on 13 June of the 3 objects for the protection for the climate, soil, and water reminded us once again. There are days when courage and motivation wave, but tonight I am here to confirm that retirement is not on the agenda. History teaches us that when it comes to democratic rights, you have to be passionate, and the women in this country know that. At the age of 20, when I was not entitled to vote at federal level, I realized that politics was neglecting 2 fundamental notions in my eyes: equality between women and men, and environmental protection. So I had to take an interest. This is one of the main reasons for my involvement in association and politics. On 7 February 1971, women in this country finally obtained the same political rights as men. Since then, I have not failed to exercise my civic rights. Voting, it's a privilege. Unlike many countries in the world, in a democracy, one can give one's opinion and shape the course of events without danger to one's freedom. The year we are celebrating 50 years of women's right to vote in Switzerland, but the equality enshrined in our constitution since 1981 is not yet achieved in practice. More than 500,000 women came to remind us to this during the 2 national strikes of 14 June 1991 and 2019. This last major citizen mobilization will have made things happen during the federal election of autumn 2019 with an unprecedented female representation in parliament. These mobilizations are reminiscent of the anti-nuclear movement of the 70s. They led to the abandonment of nuclear power plant project in Switzerland, Kaiser Augst in Aargau, after 11 weeks of occupation of the site but by opponents, and Verbois in Geneva. My husband's family, Activism, went so far as to change the names of the street in the banking district of Geneva to alert people to the degradation of our forests. All this year have made me realize that if you don't take care of politics, politics take care of you. Rather than staying with the facts, I put my word into action from 1987 to 2015, after several political mandates at communal, cantonal, and federal level under the banner of the Greens. It was clear that environmental and climate protection is only an electoral vernier that crumbles after the election. Under the omnipresent pressure of the lobbies, the parliamentary majority is playing business as usual. Politicians have short memories and variable courage. It was therefore necessary for justice to get involved. Political retirement could not therefore rhyme with militant retirement. In the course of 2015, the idea of taking legal action for the climate in Switzerland was gaining ground in order to put pressure on our government to take the courageous measures needed to tackle the climate emergency. This was confirmed by the historic verdict on the Hague Tribunal in June 2015, which ordered the Dutch government to raise its climate policy targets. Lawyers, with the support of Greenpeace, worked on a request and demonstrated that the measures taken by the Confederation for climate protection are highly insufficient, contravene the federal constitution, the European Convention of Human Rights, and endanger our health. Global warming is undoubtedly causing more frequent and more intense heat waves. Scientific studies show that older women over the age of 70 particularly vulnerable to these heat waves. This was the reason of the foundation of the Swiss Association of Senior Women for Climate Protection on 23 August 2016. We decided to take legal action against the states, a first in Switzerland. As you can see, our legal action took us all the way to the European Court of Human Rights in Strasbourg. I will come back to this and mention some events in Switzerland and beyond over our borders. Lawyers, with the support of Greenpeace, have been working on a legal request and have shown that the measures taken by the Confederation to protect the climate are highly inadequate, contravene to federal constitution and to the European Convention of Human Rights, and put on health at risk. On an essential first step before taking legal action, we submitted our request to the Federal Department of Environment, Transport and Energy. When the department did not take up the matter, we were taken to the Federal Administrative Court, the judicial authority of first instance. We responded to numerous invitations and participated in events. At the WEF, for example, we distribute biscuits to remind the participants of their climate responsibilities. But banners were not allowed. The police intervened. Invited by Greenpeace, my co-president and I had the privilege to spend a week on board the Arctic Sunrise. We headed for the Barents Sea. We met Johanna and Desiree from Philippines, Johanna and Desiree from Philippines, Kisle and Kiran from the USA, and Ingrid and Erland from the Norwegian organization Nature and Youth. It was an unforgettable week that laid the groundwork for a network of associations and NGOs that carry out legal actions.
We are Nature and Youth, and Greenpeace.
We are taking the Norwegian government to court
For opening up brand new areas for oil drilling in the Arctic.
We are Klimaseniorinnen.
Senior Women for Climate Protection.
And as senior citizens, we don't like these increasing heat waves that comes with the global warming.
So we have sued Switzerland over failure to take action on climate change.
We represent the climate and human rights petition in the Philippines.
We have triggered the first ever national investigation into the responsibility of fossil fuel companies for human rights impacts resulting from climate change.
We are part of Our Children's Trust.
We are 21 youth known collectively as Juliana versus USA.
I'm Juliana, by the way.
We have filed a constitutional climate lawsuit against the US government.
For over 60 years of actions they've taken, contributing to climate destabilization.
We are part of a growing movement that stands up and holds government and companies accountable on climate.
Join us!
The network grows during the International Colloquium in Paris, Law for Climate Justice, Jurisprudence and Citizen Mobilization. Raphaël Mahin and Luc Recordon, the lawyer, two lawyers, accompany me. The conference will result in a publication, Climate Trial, between the national and international. The chapter of our legal action is written by Raphaël Mahin. But meanwhile, the climate crisis is getting worse, what you say. And Switzerland ratified the Paris Agreement, but is not really in the law, not really in the revision of the CO2 law. It's failed to translate it. And you see it's going on with glacier, with fire, with dry rivers, and you see what happened in Switzerland till 2018. The states meeting in Katowice for the COP24 ignore the alarming IPCC reports, even though it's accompanied by a summary for political decisions makers. The Federal Administration Court rejects our appeal without ruling on the merits. Our actions continues. And the federal continues in the federal courts, our highest court. We expected a historic decision from courageous judges. It rejects our appeal on the basis of this distressing argument. If you have time to read them, it's really a pity, would it like, yeah, really a pity. So we are not at 2 degrees, we have time, we can wait, nothing to do, and just wait. But really, when we are waiting still, I mean, our planet, it's going really, really bad. And the end at 2020, hope came from the European Court of Human Rights. The court accepted the application of 6 young Portuguese against 33 European countries, including Switzerland, and gave priority to the case because of the importance and urgency of the issue raised. Our application has also passed a first stage and will be treated as a priority in recent years. Only an average of 5% of applications from Switzerland have passed this hurdle. Switzerland will submit a statement to the European Court in July 2021, which will explicitly address the right of life to life and health of the elderly. With over 2,000 members, we are counting on the European Court, a court specialized in human rights, unlike our courts, to remind Switzerland of its duty to protect us from the negative consequence of global warming and of its commitment by signing the Paris Agreement. While our courts dither and contradict each other, convicting young climate activists in several cantons, governments in neighboring countries are being forced to rethink their climate plans. Our judges, however, see no imminent danger. Have the statement of the Director General of the World Health Organization says the greatest public health danger of the 21st century. Of the Secretary of the United Nations, we are reaching a point of no return. All the reports of the unanimous scientific community, the IPCC reports, escaped them. For us, senior women for climate protection, the danger is imminent. Each hot day condemns the most fragile among us to residence and limits their freedom of movement. Heat waves, confinement become the norm every summer. The young people who are rising up want a future. We support them. Alert launcher, strikers, bearers of concrete, shared projects with their successes and failures, all want to inhabit the earth differently and, like the weavers of the philosopher Abdel Nour Bidar, repair together the torn fabric in the world. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mrs. Anne-Marie. You are truly an inspiration for us. Your journey is amazing, and we hope that we'll be like you when we are older. I would like to welcome on stage now Marie-Claire Graff. Among a lot of her titles, she is a member of the Youth Constituency to the United Nations Framework Convention for Climate Change, and she is also considered as the Greta Thunberg from Switzerland. Thank you so much.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for your brilliant inspiration. And I do hope that when I am a senior woman in Switzerland, I do not have to fight for it, because then it's too late, right? Thank you so much for all the young people who have been bringing us together here in person, but also virtually. And also the not so young people for supporting the young people in doing what we are doing. I was asked to share about my story, what is going well, but also some of the challenges, and giving some inputs on how we might be able to overcome them. So let me start with why I choose to become something like a climate activist, or why I spend so much time to protect our planet and our Earth. So it truly started with my love to nature. And in Switzerland, we are often going hiking to the mountains. And from a very young age on, I was already going off into the mountains. And there I saw the severe changes. I saw this line of the glaciers very, very rapidly. And there is one particular glacier in Grison where you actually see the annual, there are some boxes, and you see like how the glacier is declining every year, and also how it's actually going faster every year. So this was really leaving a big, big impact on me, a very depressing, frustrating impact. It was around the age of 8 years old, and later on also when I started diving in the Mediterranean Sea, as you can also see on the picture, basically like I had the imagination of all the wonderful beauty underwater, and when I was there it was just nothing, not even a fish was there. So I really saw how nature was changing. Later on I also learned that the oceans, but also the cryosphere, so that the whole frozen world, the glacier, but also the permafrost in the mountains, and also Arctic, as Mike mentioned before, are really essential to our survival on this planet. But also that they are under pressure, and that if we are not changing our current trajectory, it's impossible to survive on this planet. So the time for action is now, and we can also see this on the climate stripes here. So basically, the temperature, global average temperature from 1850 to 2018. And I think also, as you have been mentioning in your presentation, one can only be ignorant to not see the changes and still say that nothing is basically out of order. Well, sometimes this is very abstract, and people tell me, well, 1.52 degrees, what is, I don't really understand, right? But then let's just go back to us. If we have, for example, fever, it can only be 1 degree. We also get a bit worried, right? I just got my COVID vaccine and I had a little bit of pain, right? We get worried. Others got fever. If someone we truly love gets fever, and all the doctors are saying, well, the fever is going to rise and you really have to do something, and it's going to go to 2 degrees, maybe to 3, 4. I don't know about you, but at least I would panic. I would like do everything possible to save this person. So climate change is not only something for people studying natural science, but actually something which is truly human, and we all have to care about, as it would be someone of us who actually has fever. That's the difference between 1.5 or 2 degrees, because for some people, this really, really matters. So I myself decided to take everything possible to save our Earth. And of course, I'm not alone. There are many, many young people, many people from different generations all around the globe who are doing the same. So I decided to join this community and be active in this regard. Because of what I mentioned before also with the glaciers, I really realized that for me, climate protection is something so fundamental, and I also realized it throughout my studies, that if we are not able to solve the climate crisis, all other of the SDGs, the Sustainable Development Goals, we are not going to be able to achieve them, right? So we have to ensure that we have a balanced and a stable climate. So that's why I myself focus from different perspectives on the climate crisis, as already mentioned before. So when I was around, I don't exactly know when it was, but I think it was around like 14, I did a kind of an agreement with myself that I do everything possible to take unprecedented, bold, impactful, positive, meaningful, risky, and ambitious actions. Back then it was not the SDGs, but basically the previous goals, but it's very related to the SDGs, to take action on sustainability. So I started various projects. Some of you might have already been taking part. Also, University of Geneva is part of the Sustainability Week. It started in Zurich. It's a one-week momentum at the university to really bring all actors from a university together, because we do believe that the universities, as a center of knowledge, as a center of where we are creating solutions, really have to live up to this challenge and go forward. And it's not like only the bubble of like we produce the science, but we also have to act. We have to showcase that solutions are possible. We grew this from Zurich to a national level, where all the universities in Switzerland taking part, and also just before the pandemic, we have been growing the movement internationally, and we are already active on all the continents except the Antarctica, because there is not a university. But yeah, we are growing the movement to ensure that that universities and students, but also the actors at the universities, are able to lead on these changes. Also the climate strikes, I hope many of you could already been taking part. I have been with many other young people together, starting the climate strikes and ensure that we have climate strikes also here in Switzerland, also been meeting on the international level with Fridays for Future. Also, I joined an organization which is called Swiss Youth for Climate. It's a national organization for young people, ensuring that the voices of young people are heard in national as well as international climate politics. This also led me to this little bit weird acronym called YOUNGO, but it's actually very easy. It stands for Youth NGOs. And it's a mechanism, it's a global network of youth NGOs engaging in the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change with the UN climate change negotiations. And also my engagement throughout the years led me to be the youngest ever negotiator for the country of Switzerland back in 2019 at the 25th World Climate Conference, where I was able to defend or negotiate on behalf of Switzerland around topics on climate education, gender and climate, technology transfer, as well as capacity building. With all of this, I'm doing many more things, and I'm very happy also to be speaking today and support the initiative of what you're doing here. And I would like to quickly talk about how I was asked to share a little bit of insights on what we as young people can do, and I think it's very important that we are using the opportunities already there. Very often, there are a lot of events where there is very little youth participation, and I think it's in our right to ask, where is the young person? Why is a young voice not included? How are you intending to ensure that the youth voices are heard? Something the initiative is also doing. So we should absolutely make use of events already happening, of forums already happening, and ask critical questions. I think it's really, we are in a very special position to ensure that we can ask critical questions, and we should make use of this right. But also use the very traditional medias. Many of us are using social medias, but I think it's also very important to use the traditional medias, especially in Switzerland. It's reaching quite a big audience, so to ensure that we are also reaching people who are reading the newspaper on paper, and not only online, but also, for example, the TV or the radio. But also, it was already mentioned before, the importance of politics. In our constitution, in the Article 2, it's written that the politics has to ensure sustainable development and a good life for us. And we already heard from you, right, how this is under threat from the climate crisis, but also other crises. So ensuring that we hold our politicians accountable is a very important aspect to me, because they are in a position of power, of decision-making. We, as young people, are very often excluded. So for me, it's very important to at least use the opportunity to remind them about their very unique position in the system, despite they are not often acting accordingly. But this maybe sounds all great, and you think, well, she has a perfect life. But I also want to quickly tell you about some of the aspects, because many young people who are deciding to be a climate activist or being very active find themselves in tricky situations. Maybe you're kind of being in a circle, you do not really know how to advance your work. Maybe you find yourself on a very steep, like rigid path where you could kind of fall left or on the right side. Maybe you do not really know where you're going because the horizon is very foggy, or you do not even see where you are going. You probably feel very often very, very exhausted because you, especially when working in the international space, having late night calls, early night calls, or morning calls, maybe you just feel like you're dropped into the cold water and you really do not know what is coming next. Sometimes external factors are really changing the trajectory of what you're doing, where you do not really have an influence on it. And sometimes maybe the goal is so bright, but it's just so far away, and you really do not know how you get there. So there is this gap, and this gap actually stands for Gender Action Plan, also something we have to really work on when it comes to climate. So how can we advance also women participation when it comes to gender? But we really have to work on this gap, right? Because there is just simply no more time left, as I've been showing also in the beginning. So I'd love to conclude and give some of my learnings, maybe, of my last 10 years as a environmental and climate activist, and hopefully they're helpful to you as a person, maybe you as well as an organization or an initiative. And I see it a little bit as a train ride. When you go on a train, you very often know where you're going, right? You're planning very well, you check the timetable, and very often the train is also on time and everything works out very well. Nevertheless, when it comes to activism, very often it's not so plannable. Nevertheless, I think it's very important also for your own personal mental health, to kind of try to plan it a little bit. And maybe my 5 tips maybe can help you to find your own way. So for me, I think the most important is with the clarity, right? It comes with the why. That's also why I started my presentation with the why. Why I'm doing what I'm doing. And if you cannot answer the why, it can change over the time, but if you cannot answer the why, I think it's very, very hard to start your journey, because once you're in, it's going to be, you might be just like quite lost. So I think it's very important to find your why, and have some sort of clarity, and this clarity can change over your engagement. But having some sort of directional clarity is very important. Then, of course, it comes with a lot of commitment, and it's definitely not a 9-to-5 job to be a climate activist or engaging, or also when you're retired, right? It's not just, okay, now I'm done. It's something which becomes a lifestyle. It's something which requires to go out of the comfort zone, and something which is, it truly needs you as a full person to be there with your heart, with your hands, and with your brain. So the commitment needs to be there on various levels. Then, of course, the competences. Young people especially face a lot of prejudices that we are not well educated, that we do not know, we do not have the experience, and. There are like thousands of reasons why you should not involve young people. So, of course, we should educate ourselves well, and we should bring the competences with us. But we do not have to be an expert to speak up about our personal journey. We do not have to be an expert to be able to speak what we see and what we feel and what we know that is right. And also, it's not only about the hard facts we are learning, for example, here at the University of Geneva, but it's a lot about the soft facts. Because when I, for example, joined my first international climate conference, I thought I'm like really, really well prepared. So I went there, and then I was completely overwhelmed, and I couldn't even speak up, and I was just running around and was hungry and sleepy, because I didn't know where I should start trying to make the impact. So it's really important to also learn all of these soft skills to be able to actually bring across what we want to bring across, and to organize, for example, in a movement, I have a goal and what we want to achieve. So there are like various levels of competences which are very, very crucial. Then it needs a lot of courage. It's very important that we learn on how we step outside of our comfort zone, and how we are strengthening ourselves, and also ensuring that we ourselves feel like we are in a safe space, but also that we're doing this in a community. I think it's very important to have a community to support you, because a lot of time it's going well, but also there are times when you're just very, very frustrated. I showed you some examples before. So I think it's very important to have a community which uplifts you, which supports you along the way. And at the end, I think it's just very important, this is a picture from Geneva, where we have been meeting at the Université, that we're all human beings. And I truly believe if we would face each other more as human beings, and not hide behind all of the different titles we're all having, and if you go to this international conference, people have like A4 papers of titles, I think we would actually solve the crisis, because as mentioned before, the climate crisis is something inherently human. It's something which affects our lives, and it's something we as humans have to face, because we have been creating, and we are able, because we have been bringing ourselves into this mess, we're also able actually to clean it up. But we have to kind of treat it as a humanitarian crisis, and we have to treat it as human beings. And I do believe that if we all act more as humans, we were able to overcome it. And I would like to end that this is my story, and you do not have to do the same as I have been doing, but you have to find your own purpose, your own why, and I think then nothing stands in your way to become a champion of the earth. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Marie-Claire Graaf. I would like to invite Anne-Marie to join us on the stage so we can start a conversation about your activism and your career. So I had a first question for you, Marie-Claire Graaf. I was wondering what obstacles you would say were the hardest to overcome as a young activist?
I have been already outlining it a little bit before. I think it's really about the prejudices which are thrown at you. I have been studying at ETH, same as EPFL in the German part, environmental science, so I knew what I'm talking about. I have been seeing the changes. Nevertheless, when you're there, people are still like, well, you're young, you're female, like, what are you doing here? And I think the hardest was for me when I was actually a negotiator for Switzerland. I was in the negotiation, and someone approached me, an older negotiator from a European country, who was asking me, where's the negotiator of Switzerland? So well, I'm the negotiator, we can talk, right? So he was then like, no, I want to talk to the negotiator. So he clearly couldn't understand that a young female lady can actually be on the seat of a negotiator. And this is what is concerning, and this is what turns a lot of people, especially young people, off.
How would you say that you started to assert yourself as a negotiator and not as, I'm here, I'm young, I'm just a young person?
Well, it's a journey, and I wouldn't say like I'm right there, right? It's every day you're learning about new things, you're overcoming new barriers and new prejudices. But I think what is really important that that I'm trying to support as many young people as possible to overcome this, right? Because at the end, it's about the community. It doesn't matter if I am like somewhere and I can say something, but we need a collective of hundreds and thousands of young people who are able to make their voices heard. And as long as so many young people are still outside of decision-making spaces, I do not believe that we can overcome the crises we are facing. So this is how I try to kind of use my privilege as well, and the space I have.
Thank you very much. I had a question for you, Mrs. Anne-Marie. I was wondering, because you held different positions at the national, the international level, and at the local level, I was wondering what differences you saw in that involvement. On aurait voulu savoir, parce que vous avez travaillé au niveau local, au niveau national, au niveau international, quelle différence est-ce que vous avez trouvé à travers les différents niveaux de votre activisme?
Alors, oui, effectivement, les niveaux sont différents, mais je pense que si on prend le communal, hein, ma commune où j'ai commencé, c'est un niveau très très important, parce que dans une commune, on peut agir concrètement. On s'occupe du ménage communal et on peut agir et prendre des décisions qui sont bonnes pour la commune. Et je pense qu'au niveau de l'environnement, toute décision pour l'environnement est importante. Bien sûr qu'après, au niveau cantonal, le niveau était différent et on prenait des décisions au niveau cantonal et on dépend aussi beaucoup de ce qui se décide au niveau de la Confédération, à Berne, où j'ai aussi siégé. Mais je pense que chaque niveau a son importance et que chaque personne engagée à ces différents niveaux a son importance pour faire changer les choses, même si, bien sûr, elle ne change pas aussi vite qu'on le souhaiterait.
Merci beaucoup. So I think the most important part was about how every level is important and how every little thing can change something. So even if you act on a smaller and local level, you still make a difference because you change a community, you shape a community, and every level is important because at a national level, of course, you have a bigger impact. But because every impact is so important, every level has the same and essential importance. Thank you. I had a question for both of you as well. Marie-Claire Graff, you characterize how would you characterize new movements of activism? And how would you say that activism and movements of involvement have changed across the years? Comment est-ce que vous diriez que les mouvements en fait, d'activisme ont changé à travers votre carrière? Would you like to start?
I can quickly start because I do think that movements like the climate strike, the sustainability week, or the international youth climate movement are not so different from what we have been seeing, for example, against the nuclear power plants or many others, right? So we are using the same communication, we are using the same way of how we are organizing ourselves. I mean, there we are learning from the older from the generation who have been doing this before and going through these struggles. Also, like indigenous people, they have been mobilizing for so many years. But I think what is different is that it's just got more and more urgent, right? I mean, the science is now so clear that they are basically talking in some reports about the extinction of humanity, right? And this was not the case. Before we talked about the impact of the next generation of our kids, and now we are talking about the impact on the elderly women here in Switzerland. We are talking about the impact on kids, which is happening right here, right now. Mm-hmm. And I think this is what changed. So the urgency and the dimension and the scale changed. But how we are organizing ourselves, I mean, maybe people have different opinion, but I think it's not so different than it happened before.
Thank you.
Oui,
Would you agree?
je rejoins ce que vient de dire Marie-Claire Graff. Effectivement, pour être une militante de longue date, les manifestations, nous les avons faites et nous étions très nombreux contre le nucléaire ou pour d'autres raisons, pour les femmes, la grève des femmes, comme je l'ai dit tout à l'heure, hein, en 1991, nous étions déjà 500 000. Et donc, les mouvements, notamment des jeunes récemment pour le climat, ce qui change, effectivement, c'est l'urgence absolue. Le problème, c'est que l'urgence absolue n'est pas prise en compte au niveau politique, au niveau économique, au niveau financier, et qu'on continue business as usual. Et donc, il faut encore que les jeunes se lèvent et fassent, par exemple, comme ce projet formidable qui met en réseau ce que je sais faire, et si j'ai un problème, je peux aussi le transmettre et trouver une solution. Je pense que ce qui peut se passer à l'ONU avec les jeunes à l'avenir, c'est très, très important qu'on les écoute, comme on doit écouter les scientifiques du GIEC qui répètent en boucle depuis des décennies que l'urgence est absolue.
Merci beaucoup. So I think that both of our speakers agree very much so that the movements are the same, that people still go on the streets, people are still very, they still feel the same about issues and they still want to make a difference, but that the difference is that now we have a very big urgency and that in the economical and financial level, there is not much change going on, and that's very frustrating, I can imagine, for an activist to see. Thank you very much. Marie-Claire Graff, I have another question. Why is implementing change through new politics so difficult?
Well, our political system, I mean, it can be the United Nations, but it can also be our government. I mean, they have been setting up after, I mean, the UN after the World War, they have been, as also mentioned by Alessandra, had to overcome very different difficulties. They have been mainly trying to tackle war and hunger and to restore peace. But they haven't been dealing with the global climate crisis, with a global biodiversity crisis. So the challenges we are facing now changed. The same also for our government. Back then, when our government was established, I mean, it changed a little bit throughout the year, was not set up to solve so fundamental global challenges we are facing right now. And I think if we would now set up a United Nations, if we would now set up governments, we would do it very, very differently. But the system itself, also the people who are in the system also profit from a certain system, and they want to keep it. And also there is a lot of economic benefit. I mean, like the big oil companies, I mean, they have no interest, right, that our government is strong and, for example, passing the CO2 law, right? They have no interest in supporting, truly supporting, for example, young people who are aiming to change this, or other generations as well. So the system itself benefits from how it is at the moment. That's why it's so resistant. And the second aspect is that the human brain has a very strong tendency to keep the same, right? We do not like change. We do not like the unknown. We do not like the transformation, despite we know it is better, but it's very, very hard to go on this journey yourself.
I can imagine. What would you say to someone that is quite skeptical that a lifestyle of climate protection is possible?
Well, I mean, first, I think it's important to understand that not everyone needs to be convinced. If there is someone like very, very strongly opposing, then, well, that's it, right? So we do not have to have everyone on board. Actually, there's a very interesting study from social movements that when you have, I think, like 3.5% or something like this of people in a community or in a country who are very actively supporting a certain cause, in history it always brought along the changes they desired for. So we do not need even a majority, and we do not need everyone. Nevertheless, of course, it's important. I think it's important to address the people's fear, because very often they think like you're taking something from them, right? We saw this in the CO2 law. Oh, you're taking the cars, driving cars only for rich people. You're trying to steal my vacation because I cannot fly around the world, right? So it's coming from a place of fear, and I think we need to truly listen to the people who have this fear and try to understand where it's coming from and solve these issues, which are sometimes, I mean, which are always built on prejudices and very wrong assumptions. But this also needs to, that we have to overcome certain barriers. And myself growing up on the countryside, where we had like very, very dark red, it was almost black people voted like 5 times no for all the votes 3 weeks ago. So there is a lot of skepticism, and we do not overcome it by just simply vote yes or no. What we need is citizens' assembly where people actually like can go there and be part of this dialogue, be part of the solution, feel ownership of it. And this is unfortunately not possible if they basically just do like a cross yes or no and get a red booklet. They do not understand what is written in there.
Thank you very much. I would like to welcome Eline on the stage so that she can answer some of your questions. You can still ask your questions on the chat on our website, and we will be reading them out loud right now. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Emma, for giving the possibility to the public to interact with you. There are many questions. There is this one from Oscar from Mexico, which represents the internationality of our project, that asks, what can we do to make climate science more accessible to everyone? And do you consider this could aid reduce climate skepticism?
Would you like to answer?
Ce qu'il faut faire de plus, effectivement, je pense que ne serait-ce que les jeunes qui manifestent ou qui s'engagent ont déjà beaucoup fait. Je pense que les pays riches, comme la Suisse, devraient être exemplaires et ne le sont pas. Ça, c'est une première chose. Et que les pays du Sud, les pays pauvres, les pays en développement, sont les premiers impactés par les changements climatiques et la crise climatique. Donc, d'abord, je pense que les pays riches doivent prendre leurs responsabilités. Ça fait des décennies qu'ils émettent et des décennies qu'ils posent problème au climat et à l'environnement. Donc ça, c'est une première chose. Et puis je pense qu'au niveau international, il y a des décisions qui doivent se prendre, même si c'est très difficile, et puis que les énergies fossiles doivent rester dans le sous-sol et qu'on doit vraiment s'embarquer dans la transition énergétique. On a les moyens de le faire, on sait ce qu'on doit faire, et à part ça, on ne le fait pas. Donc je pense que oui, les pays qui ont les moyens, nous tous, nous devons convaincre nos dirigeants, nous devons convaincre nos entreprises qu'il est temps, absolument temps d'agir.
What Anne-Marie wanted to say is that as a rich country, countries like Switzerland have some sort of responsibility, because the first countries that are impacted are countries in the south, countries that are not as developed and have some far more difficulties financially and in other ways, and that it is our responsibility because we have a solid government, we have the possibility to have an impact through votations, and that we have some sort of responsibility in the question of climate change. Eline, would you like to repeat the question so that Marie-Claire Graff can answer it?
Yeah, yes, for sure. So the question is, what can we do to make climate science more accessible to everyone? And do you consider this could aid reduce climate skepticism?
Yeah, thank you so much. To add what you have already been mentioning, currently in our scientific world I've been studying as well, and many of us have been studying, it's not even desired to translate science to people outside of the universities. Very often, I mean, the currency in science is writing scientific reports. Some experts read, some experts understand, but it's not really meant for the broad public. And I think this needs to change, and actually can even be dangerous for a scientist to go out there, talk to the media, talk about what he or she is actually researching on. We have been seeing this, that they face up to death threats, right? When they're actually speaking up. We see it with COVID, we see this with climate, we see this on biodiversity. And I think this needs to change, that we are not only publishing papers after papers after papers, but actually that we are translating it into easy understandable language. But also then it still needs to go to the right audience, because just because you're translating it doesn't yet go to the people. And I've been before showing some way, and I think it's really, really important that our media, especially, for example, the Swiss radio and television, that they are living up on this responsibility, because they get governmental money, and they have in their statutes actually a clause to educate the public, and they're not, in my opinion, not yet doing so. Otherwise, I think we wouldn't have lost the vote if people truly understand what it means to be in a climate crisis. So it can absolutely overcome skepticism, and it can solve some of these uncertainties and some of these fears.
On peut peut-être juste ajouter aussi que la justice maintenant s'en mêle, et que la justice peut faire changer les choses, puisque ces derniers temps, dans les pays européens, en Autriche, en Allemagne, en Angleterre, en Irlande, aux Pays-Bas, la justice a condamné le gouvernement qui, justement, n'en faisait pas suffisamment et ils ont dû revoir leur copie. Donc, on compte sur la justice et la Cour européenne des droits de l'homme. Parce que je pense que la Cour européenne des droits de l'homme va s'en mêler. Le climat et les droits fondamentaux. La crise climatique et les droits fondamentaux. Et ça, je pense que c'est aussi une des solutions.
What could also be a solution today is the fact that today we can use the justice system to actually have an impact. If you look at, for example, what happened in the Netherlands quite recently, the government felt that, I can't remember what, c'était Shell, right?
Oh oui, Shell, oui. Shell, mais c'était les gouvernements. Alors oui, il y a aussi des condamnations de grandes entreprises comme Shell récemment aux Pays-Bas, mais dans les autres pays, ce sont les gouvernements qui ont été condamnés à revoir leurs lois et à revoir, évidemment, d'avoir une politique climatique très ambitieuse.
Well, the justice system can have a great impact today. It can actually force the public to have a bigger impact. And I think that's what you meant, kind of, the government. Eileen, do you have another question?
Yeah, I have another question for Madame Marer. Some people, they are appreciating your courage for having appealed to the European Court, but some others are asking you what encouragement would you give to people that don't even have this possibility of judiciary independent institution?
Oui, c'est compliqué. C'est donc elle demande qu'est-ce qu'on peut faire si on n'a pas la possibilité d'aller en justice, mais en réalité, il faut chercher la voie de la justice. Par exemple, nous, au départ, nous avons été soutenus par Greenpeace, où les jeunes Portugais dont j'ai parlé, qui sont aussi maintenant à la Cour européenne, ils ont été soutenus par une équipe d'avocats qui ont conduit leurs requêtes. Et je pense qu'il ne faut pas se décourager et trouver des pistes et des appuis. Mais c'est sûr que ce n'est pas facile. Mais dans le monde, maintenant, il y a plus de 2000 actions judiciaires en cours, partout dans le monde, partout, dans tous les pays du monde. Donc, je pense que la voie, on la trouve, et que si on n'est pas écouté, et qu'on se trouve dans des situations, dans certains pays du Sud, je pense aux jeunes Philippines que j'ai rencontrées en Norvège, dont une avait perdu toute sa famille dans le typhon Haiyan. Quand ils parlent, quand ils s'adressent à des ONG, quand ils cherchent de l'aide, ils la trouvent, parce que c'est tellement fort comme témoignage. Et puis, c'est comme ça dans bien d'autres pays.
I think that when you really want to find help, you can find help. So if you don't have a proper justice system, for example, what Anne-Marie did is that she went to Greenpeace, and that for people, for example, in Philippines that had difficulties to access the justice system, they were able to, with their courage and what they had seen, to find people that were willing to help you. So I think what you meant to say is that you shouldn't discourage yourself and that you should go on.
Et puis j'ajouterais qu'il y a maintenant de plus en plus d'avocats et avocates. On le voit ici en Suisse romande, avec les jeunes activistes qui sont en procès et qui sont condamnés d'ailleurs, certains. Eh bien, il y a des équipes maintenant, il y en a plus de 40 en Suisse romande, bénévoles, qui défendent leur cause. Et ça, c'est magnifique. Merci à ces personnes.
There are also a lot of lawyers that will help you for free because they are good people. Eileen?
I have another question for Mrs. Marie-Claire Graf. Someone is asking, do you think that the older generation is responsible for the environmental context?
Let me very first give a very short answer to what was discussed before. I think it's also our responsibility, from you, from all of us, from myself, to stand up for the ones who do not have the access to the legal system, or do not know how to access it, or have other barriers. I work a lot with young people from over 160 countries together, and there are young people who do not want to work under their real name because they are they are fearing to get threats from the government. There are young people who use different email addresses to not be tracked by the government. We have been seeing young climate activists and other activists being put in jail, not only here in Switzerland, but also a country where it's actually not so nice to end up in jail. Because in Switzerland, I mean, it's not nice to be in jail, but you are still like on a rather good level when it comes to this. So I think it's very important for us to not only talk on our behalf, but also on the ones which voices are sidelined and not listened to. But yeah, coming back to your question, I mean, of course, young people haven't been around on the planet for so long. They are, of course, causing a less greenhouse gas emission. Nevertheless, I do not think that we are solving the crisis by just pointing fingers and saying the others are responsible. But I think it's very important to, for example, if there is a company who is clearly like not taking action, or a government who is clearly not taking action, to point the responsibility to an institution or to a government or to a company, and if needed, take even legal action. I mean, it should not be the case that we actually have to do this, but if it's not possible differently, I think this is one way how we can do it. But at the end, I think what we need is an intergenerational approach to solve the climate crisis, and this needs, for example, also to happen when it comes to decision making, and there we are seeing a lot of old people, still very often straight, old, white, European male people sitting in a lot of decision-making positions, and they do not have an interest to listen to a young female lady coming from an island state or from an African country, right? Or also listen to young people here because they're very comfortable in their own position. So I think that, yes, of course, they are responsible for what has been happening, but this is the past. But what we can do right now, these people who are in positions of power can change by involving a more diverse and representative group of people. And there I unfortunately still do not see a lot of changes because it's very comfortable to sit in your group amongst your friends who all have like a very like-minded opinion.
Thank you very much. I have a question for Mrs. Marer. Someone is asking, how do you keep motivated after this long environmental journey?
Oui, j'ai toujours la motivation. Je l'ai parce qu'il me semble que, d'abord, je l'ai fait pendant tant d'années et que, pour l'instant, je suis en bonne santé, j'ai l'énergie et je vois ce qui se passe. Et puis, je vois les jeunes qui se lèvent. Et ça aussi, ça me donne encore de l'énergie. Et donc, je garde cette motivation et je n'ai pas du tout l'intention de baisser les bras.
She was saying that because she sees around her so many young people that get up and feel the same way as she does, she feels the energy coming from us, and she does not see a reason to stop because she's been doing it for so long, and there's no reason to stop, really.
No reason.
I have a final question, maybe. For both of you, someone is asking, what is the simplest answer to a climate change skeptical person?
Do you want to start?
Yeah, well, I mean, it's not that the skepticism is coming from one place, right? They have very often different, some like deny the science, some deny the possibility that actually we as humans have an influence, some deny that we can overcome it. So there is not a single answer, but very often listening and like really like trying to find the underneath fear and the root cause why a person is skeptical in regards to science is the way to go, right? So it's not a quick fix, it's not an easy journey, and it needs truly listening. But also, as I mentioned, if there is someone who just like simply like is very like narrow-minded and really doesn't want to change, then you maybe better talk to the huge mass of people who actually are optimists and who actually want to do something, but maybe do not know exactly how they're doing it, and maybe your time is better invested trying to motivate these people than getting stuck at one person who just doesn't want to change. And there are a lot of them, like in where I'm coming from in the mountains. I always say, like, for me, it's so easy to talk at the international panels with all the experts because people understand me. When I go back to my village, people do not understand what I'm doing. They do not see the changes. They do not feel the fears I'm feeling. They do not understand their unique position, also like the farmers, how they actually can make a difference. And it's really, really sad to see. But yeah, at the end, I think we have to invest our time where we have a big impact. And yeah, I mean, let's try, but if it doesn't work, then yeah, let's go on.
As a climate activist, it must be very frustrating to put a lot of effort in something and feeling like sometimes it's not coming through the way you want it to come out. How do you stay motivated, and what do you hang on when you feel like times are low?
Yeah, well, I think this is probably most part of my life, because most things are not going the way we want it to go. Otherwise, we probably would already have overcome the crisis. And for me, it's also like we have been seeing so many people who are now older, right? We're another generation, also my parents, who have been going on the streets against the nuclear power plants, who have been striking for the right of vote for women, who have been going through this journey as well and going through the struggle and seeing that there are some successes, right? Is also really truly motivating. Also, I have been sharing before the 5 C's, which are kind of keeping me going. I think this is a good compass to move on, and I think the most important is having the community, having people who are listening, who are understanding, people who are going with you through all of these depths and going with you through all of these fears. Yeah, I think this is really important, having these people as a human resources. And I think also when someone wants to join or start something, it's always good to just watch out for people. I do not recommend do it alone, because I think it's tough.
Pas tout seul, je suis d'accord. Et puis, c'est difficile de sortir de l'entre-soi, c'est-à-dire, on est tous des convaincus, on croise beaucoup de convaincus. Et comment sortir de l'entre-soi pour aller convaincre les autres? Et ceux qui veulent rien savoir, effectivement, je crois qu'il ne faut pas dépenser d'énergie. Et puis, il faut montrer à ceux qui sont partants qu'il y a des solutions et que ça marche. Et de montrer le verre à moitié plein plutôt que le verre à moitié vide, parce qu'autrement, on désespère. Et le but n'est pas de désespérer, mais au contraire, d'avoir de l'espoir.
It's very important to focus on the people that you can convince and that you can talk to that are going to react positively to what you say, because otherwise it can get very lonely, je pense, I think. So we should always be positive and focus on the people that we can talk to and convince. Thank you very much. Merci beaucoup. I think we're out of time. Thank you.
Merci. Merci beaucoup.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much again, Mrs. Maurer, Mrs. Marie-Claire Graff, for being here, for answering our questions. It was so interesting. It really inspired us. It's really, it makes me really happy to see that you believe in us, that you're here, and I hope that it will inspire more people with this conference. And now I will let Victor Amoretti, one of the GYC members, close the conference because we are coming at the end. And he will conclude and tell you what to do next to support us. Thank you.
So thank you, Noah. We are very happy to have been able to present this debate to you. It was even more important for us to start the Geneva Youth Call with a conference on the subject of the environment, which is a priority for young people around the world. This is indeed the main goal of this project, to bring together the world's youth in order to draw ideas and solutions to respond to the problems of the entire world. But that does not stop us from doing events like this and inviting people from different generations to listen to their opinion and learn from their ideas and experiences. That is why the opportunity to have created this debate on the environment with Mrs. Maurer and Mrs. Graff is a great chance, because their speeches are very inspiring and fully in line with the Geneva Youth Call values. Indeed, the key values of this project are mobilization and innovation. Today, on the subject of the environment, the Geneva Youth Call takes the opportunity to share its values, but also to find solutions to the environmental crisis, thanks to our speakers, and soon thanks to you. This first part of the conference is now over, but we still suggest that you participate in workshops on different topics, which will take form of discussions between participants in different rooms online. Depending on your workshops, the aim will be to discuss a subject on ecology and bring a solution, or to discuss the organization of the assembly that Geneva Youth Call will hold at the end of the year. These workshops will last an hour and a half and will be moderated by 2 members of Geneva Youth Call. Please note, only the first one is open to the public, not registered in advance. The different Zoom links are available on the platform. Do not hesitate to join us, as this is an opportunity to hear your opinions and solutions, which is the founding idea of the Geneva Youth Call. I would like to remind you to check and contribute in our online platform, Geneva Youth Call. And finally, before closing this session, the team would like to thank Anne Marer and Marie-Claire Graff for their contribution to this event, but also for their support in our project. Thanks also to Mike Holm for his investment, his encouragement, and the faith he has in the Geneva Youth Call. Thank you also to Mrs. Vellucci, the representative of the United Nations in this project, and also the University of Geneva, represented here by Mrs. Hulot, and the Global Studies Institute, represented by Mr. Esposito, without whom the project will never have emerged. Finally, thank you to all the participants and people who are following our project. We are very happy to see that the Geneva Youth Call appeals to so many people, and we look forward to changing things together in the future with you. Thank you. Thank you very much.